So in this video, I will be attempting to demystify the concept or the idea of Satsang. And I'll start with the Wikipedia definition of Satsang, and basically it's an Indian word from Sanskrit language, and it means associate with true people or be in the company of true people. But it's also related to sitting with a Sat guru or an enlightened teacher in a meeting. That's how Wikipedia defines Satsang, and but that doesn't really tell you much, does it, if you don't have any clue what it is about. I have personally been to Satsangs many times with at least three different teachers, enlightened teachers, in live person, and also some teachers online through Skype, but those have been private sessions, but still is the same thing basically. So Satsang for me is something I know a lot about, and I also, in the beginning it was a big mystery, I didn't understand, and my first teacher didn't really care about definitions and these kind of things. He was more like, keeping it very vague and not really caring about teaching too much. It's more about sharing, and he called it a pub, and everybody should drink of the energy and become more happy. That's how he that way was his style of teaching. Was very, I wouldn't say childish, but more childlike. It was more like not an advanced way of teaching in terms of discourse, but very effective when it came to how it actually helped people. But anyway, I'm more about, logic, and I like to have clear definitions of things, and that's why I will try to talk about this concept, because I think it's still a mystery for a lot of people in the West, especially, because in the East and in India and these countries, this is something that's in the backbone of the whole culture. That it's something that's been, it has never been lost in that culture. It's been since ancient times. It's been around. It's been, people instinctively or intuitively know that if someone is enlightened or a high-level person, they will gather around. Even if they're not officially part of the gathering, they will just sit as close as they can. Just because they know that the energy is beneficial. So they have much more of an understanding in those kind of cultures than we have in the modernized, so-called modern society in the West. I believe that a lot of people, since the 60s, there has been, gurus have becoming, since the Beatles had their own guru from India and whatnot. At that time, there was a lot of interchange between the West and the East, and those traditions sort of merged when rich and famous people and other people went to India, and they brought gurus back to the West and back and forth like that. And that's when the Satsang concept sort of became part of the Western culture. And since then, there has been many enlightened teachers in the West. Some of them have come from India or the East, and some of them are also from the West. My first teacher, he left the West Europe, where he lived, when he was only 15 years old, and he went to India for searching for happiness, freedom, enlightenment, whatnot. And eventually he found different teachers, and as he got enlightened after a long search and many years, and then he traveled around in Himalayas, and eventually ended up back in his home country, where he became a Satsang teacher. But there are many different styles. Every enlightened teacher will have his different style and how to do it, but essentially Satsang is basically a transfer of energy. It's like the enlightened teacher is like a tuning fork vibrating at whatever level he is at. Let's say it's 1000, the highest level possible for in the human form at this time. So he's sitting there and he's vibrating at this very high level and high frequency, and then people gather around in meditative states, and they attempt, or they try to tune in to that frequency, which happens naturally as you sit and meditate in that teacher's presence. But it depends to a large degree on your own sensitivity and your own level of consciousness, because it's much easier for, let's say, people in the 300s to begin to resonate with a higher frequency than if you're, let's say, you're way below 200 on the scale of consciousness. You will have a problem because you're too insensitive and too dense to be able to, to tune into the frequency, the higher frequency. Which is why some people will not feel anything when they come to such a teacher, and they will misunderstand basically everything that's going on. There are exceptions. You can still be, let's say you're born at a high level. Let's say you're born in somewhere in 300s, which many seekers of enlightenment and many light workers are. Basically everyone almost is born somewhere in the 300s if you are into this ascension thing. Let's say that's the case, but you still you find yourself trapped or in a low level because that's how life goes, and you come to such a teacher, you will be able to, most likely at least, very rapidly be, get far up from that level, because that teacher will his energy will resonate with you even if you're at a low level, because you're artificially trapped at a low level. You were born at a higher level, which means you have a much easier time to get high again than somebody who was born, let's say, in at level 250 or something like that. If you're born in the 200s, you will have a much harder time than somebody who's born at 350 and trapped below 200. And part of the reason is that the teacher will, his energy will be so, and his light he shines will be so bright and so powerful that the archon beings that are feeding off of your life energy basically will be blasted away if he puts his focus and attention on you, and his energy sort of directly hits your energy system. It will blast away the archons. I've seen this happen with a friend of mine and other people too. He came up to such a teacher at a very low level, below 200, but he was still a very sensitive person and born much higher. But he was, not in a good shape, and he was very afraid. He was there for 2 weeks in that retreat, and every day there was a satsang, and every day he would hide behind, as far behind as he could in the room, hide behind a post or something, not really wanting to, be seen. And he never contacted, he never asked a question, or never did anything to draw attention to him in those sessions, and sometimes he wouldn't even show up. So everybody was curious to how this will go. Would he actually get the courage to do something finally? On the very last day, he wrote a letter to the teacher, which that's how it works. You write a letter the day before, and the teacher read up the letter in front of everybody the next day on Satsang. And so this was the very last day of the retreat. He was leaving the same night basically. And then the teachers, he had also been waiting obviously that if this guy would actually make it. So the teacher called him up, come up to me, in front. So he had to walk up 20 meters and sit in front of everybody and face the teacher directly. And I could just see that he was it was like he was sitting in a very powerful wind. Not a physical wind in that sense, but an energetic wind of light. And I could see just, that he was being blasted completely with this powerful energy. And, then after this, everybody who talked to him, in the retreat, they said he was like a completely new person. So basically he went from way below 200 into the 300s in one little session like that. And he was completely transformed. His physical appearance even was changed because of that meeting. He was a completely new person, a lot more confident. Just that. Yeah, I've never seen anybody transform as much as he did in one basically 2-minute session like that. But it's possible. And it was amazing to see how much he transformed, how much he changed after that. And after that, his life became almost exclusively about enlightenment. He was only seeking for that, and he didn't care about much else, and he became dedicated. So that's very possible. If you have, that's why the birth level and your current level is important to know, because if you find yourself on a low level and you have a higher birth level, you can easily, quickly get up in a much better life if you get to have a session with a high level teacher like that. But for many people it wouldn't go that fast, and especially after you reach back to your birth level and maybe a little bit above that, you still have to do the work to get higher. But being in the field that is generated by such a teacher, high level energy field, is definitely a very, you could call it a shortcut to higher levels, because it's the most efficient way to get, except following your highest excitement formula. That is obviously the overall most efficient way. But being in, if your excitement leads you to such a teacher, then it definitely will be beneficial, and many times it will completely change your life in a manner of maybe days or weeks. But it all depends on how willing you are to tune into the higher level and not focus too much on what the teacher says, because a lot of people misunderstand, and they focus too much on the discourse of what the teacher is talking about, and many times the teacher will say provocative stuff on purpose, because he can sense everybody's field that is in front of him, and he can see what they are stuck, what issues they are stuck upon, and he will sometimes touch those issues on purpose, just because that's how he can make them flow more freely in themselves. But that many times will provoke people too, so they will sometimes misunderstand. But my advice would be to not take too seriously what the teacher says, and tune into the energy and bliss out on that. Because that's how you will automatically transform, because as Bashar has talked about also, if you're exposed to a higher level ET being, for example, then what happens is that all the stuff in you that is stopping you from being at the same level will be brought up in you. But the ETs are so high level frequency that it will create a psychic shock for the system, because it's too much. The discrepancy or the difference is too big. But it's not too big, or at least not usually, between a regular, or not, a earth level Satsang teacher and a regular person. That's different, because the ETs are basically from a different dimension, which is even higher than what you would call enlightenment in this dimension or this reality. So Satsang is basically just tuning into the highest, the person with the highest frequency in the room is the tuning fork that everybody else is trying to make themselves as receptible as possible to tune into, which means you have to get rid of whatever comes up in your system as you sit in the field is stuff that you need to get rid of, so you can actually function at the highest possible level, and ideally at the same level as a teacher in time. And you could also say that the whole planet has been undergoing a global satsang for many years, and is coming to a head now, but it's been going on for a long time. With the whole planet is surrounded by all sorts of different ETs and civilizations, and they are blasting the planet with their high level frequencies. And I guess you also get the frequencies from the central sun in the galaxy, and which again affects our sun, which again affects the planet. So you have like all these frequencies hitting the Earth. And right now, if you look at the Schumann Resonance, which is being measured, you can actually see that starting in this year, there has been a lot of very strange thing that's almost, I think it's unheard of before, that you see these large sections of 40 hertz frequencies, Schumann frequencies, which has never been, the regular Schumann frequency has been changing gradually for a while. It used to be around, I think, 7 hertz, I'm not sure, but at least not more than 10, 12 hertz It varied across the globe a little bit, I think, but it used to be quite low like that. That was the normal. Then it started to change gradually for a while, and now what we are seeing is unprecedented 40 hertz blasts. Basically, they show up as white, big white patches on the Schumann Resonance graph. You can Google it up, and what seems to be happening is that these blasts are upgrading everything, including our DNA and our consciousness and the whole. That's basically a symptom of the ascension going on. And I believe, and I've heard channelists talking about this, that in the year when we are out of the eye of the needle passage point and we are coming through on the other side, I believe the new normal Schumann frequency will be 40 hertz and above. And this is like I don't know if you have trouble sleeping lately, but when these blasts come, I have very bad trouble sleeping. And you can see many times they will last almost like a half day or for a full day, these things. And I know I'm quite sensitive to these things, and I have a real trouble sleeping when these things hitting. So big things are happening with the whole energy system of the planet and of every person involved. And I believe this will be the new normal as we enter the new reality of a more ascended, more blending with the 4D and the astral, which is going to come to a head and basically a climax at the end of this year. So starting the next decade is going to be a completely new reality opening up, because we will perceive reality completely differently as we ascend into different levels of consciousness. So this is the global satsang, the universal satsang that's been going on for a while, which is the Ascension. And you also have the ET encounters that people have had. Millions of people have been so-called abducted by aliens. And a lot of that has to do with many things, but it also has to do with being exposed to the higher frequencies in the UFOs and from the aliens directly like that will cleanse your system of a lot of fear-based stuff and darkness, which is what I personally experienced around 8-9 months ago now, which I talk about in the previous videos. So definitely that's a very effective kind of up close and personal satsang by ETs, but it's the same principle as any kind of satsang. Even when I found myself fresh out of when I hit the 540s and I had like a lot of Kundalini energy and very powerful, I felt like I had a lot of energy flowing to my system as I blasted up to that level, and I came back to normal society. I noticed that if I shook hands with people and whatnot, they would look at me like they were in complete shock, because my energy was just too much higher than theirs, and they would just be they look like deers caught in a headlight, in the front light of a car or something. Sometime, not every time it happened, but some people it would happen with like that. I guess they were sensitive, so I could feel like if it happened, I could feel that I was blasting them with light, and they didn't realize what was happening. It happened to them unconsciously, but they looked scared, like completely in shock almost, and then they just snapped out of it, and they just went about their without really asking about it, because it just happens on a level they can't comprehend. So that became like a normal for me, like very strange to meet people, because I never knew if they would be in shock or if they would not notice anything. So actually it became almost more it was kind of unpleasant, because many of them would contract inside to protect themselves, because they don't want to face whatever comes up in such a transfer. They don't want to. They blocked what was coming up in them, so they could be at the same level, which is the normal reaction. So they would contract inside, and that contraction I would feel immediately in my system as kind of you could call it energetic violence. It's like a closing down, which reflected in my system. So I became like really, it wasn't fun for me to meet new people or shake hands or, face new people. Even sitting on a bus, I would never want to sit, so I had to face other people. It became like, their blending energies with people became very not easy for me for many years because of this. And it actually became more relaxed to be with low-level people below 200, that level, because they would at least not feel anything. They were too, dense to pick up on these things. So I could relax more around such people. So I had such friends also from old times. But anyway, so Satsang, every enlightened teacher will have a different style, and you might not connect with one teacher, even though he's at the same level. Two people at 1,000 can have very different styles, and I've been with different kind of teachers, actually kind of two opposites. One is very loving and all about love, and the other one is extremely confrontative, blasting people. If he sees something in you, that he will flex his whole spiritual muscle and just blast you with a very powerful confrontation, which doesn't feel bad inside. It looks scary when he does it to other people, because it's very powerful. It makes the whole audience tremble almost in fear, because it looks so powerful. But when he does it to you, it actually feels good, because it's just blasting you with a lot of energy that doesn't feel bad at all inside. So it looks more scary than it actually is. But that's some teachers have that style, and they will be very, very masculine kind of style. And he was not at 1,000, that teacher. He was, I guess, in the high 700s or something like that. Still enlightened, but not at the highest level of it. But, there are many different styles. He is the only teacher I've seen who was that confrontative. I mean, most high-level teachers are more like about love, and they relax more, and he is more like, he wants to dig into the core beingness. He wants to drill inside, basically. It's almost like too much force, and but that's, some people like that. Some people think that works, and that's what he did with himself when he became enlightened. So I guess he believes that is the only way. That's kind of how it works. But most teachers will not do these kind of things like that. They will take it much more slow, relaxed. And you can definitely find, these days, you can just go online, you can search. There are many, many enlightened teachers available. There is a YouTube channel called Buddha at the Gas Pump. And this is a guy who basically interviews enlightened teachers from all over the world. He conducts a Skype interview with them. And he has hundreds of people interviewed. So you can pick and choose from that channel, or you can just search online. And you'll definitely find many different teachers. Some of them will be available for private Skype sessions, and some of them will have retreats, different parts of the world. So, if it's something that resonates with you, if it's something that excites you, and if you feel that this is the right next step for you, you should definitely check it out. But you shouldn't force yourself into it. It has to be. For me, it came very naturally, and it usually does. And it can be really, really beneficial. It can change your whole life, and definitely it's something to consider. And I think in the future now, in the coming decade, there will be this will be mainstream. This will be the new mainstream. Satsang will be as mainstream as physical yoga has been for a while. That's how I see in the coming decade. A lot of new teachers will be stepping up, and it will be I think the whole concept of enlightenment and spiritual and consciousness growth will be mainstream in the coming decade. It will be the new thing that everybody's into. So don't worry, it will be widely available very soon if you can't find something now, but you should be able to if you search a little bit around. And certainly, if you want help, to find a teacher, you can just send me an email, and I will give you some options. And also, one thing to consider is that what I've seen intuitively when it comes to these archon beings is that they seem to concentrate around the heart area, the heart chakra. That's where they feed off of the life energy. I've seen this intuitively in other people, and I've felt it in myself. As they left, basically, I could feel them leave the heart area after what I went through. And you could say that the chakra profile, that your heart usually is the heart that is not, that's the problem for most people in this level, in this density here, because it's all about opening the heart, unconditional love, basically. So you could say that, that if, let's say, your heart chakra is functioning at 25%, that means that the archons are, or that, 75% goes to loosh, basically archon food. So if your heart chakra is functioning at 25%, then 75% is loosh. It goes constantly to feed the archons because of all the negative beliefs you have buried in your system that you're not conscious of, and that creates the fear that these beings are feeding off. So even at the highest level, some of it still goes to loosh, because as long as you're in this system as it has been, even if you're a high level person, you're still not 100%. Your heart will very seldom I've never seen any teacher who has a chakra level 100% for the heart, or for any chakra for that matter. 95 is the most I've seen. So I guess a little bit energy goes to loosh, even for the highest level enlightened teacher in this reality, which means there is always a potential for for a fall, for a teacher to fall. It has to be like that. It's like the yin yang symbol. There's always this little dark dot in the middle of the white, which is the potential to reverse the whole thing. That's how I see it with these chakra profiles. So that's something to consider, with the less energy that you give away to loosh, to archon food, the more it will benefit yourself instead, So that's, what you need to do when it comes to unconditional love, is to basically stop resisting all these things that you're trying to hide for yourself, and basically accept them up to the surface. And then when they're gone, your heart chakra and your basic energy system will increase in efficiency and whatnot, and less percentages of your life energy, your life force, your essential force will go to loosh. So that's the whole journey. Become free and stop being, a matrix feeding cow for the archons, basically. I think that's about it when it comes to Satsang, and I'll see you around.